On January the 10th, 2010, we completed the expropriation, is another quote from Dan Matheson. January the 10th, 2010.
That statement is the farthest from the truth. All they did at that time was they got possession. That was the beginning of the fight, not the end of the fight. Now is when we turn around and talk about all that happened and the damages and what I was talking about, the full payment. But it's important for everybody in Stratford to get this point. Wendy and I have Section 41 and 42 rights. Those are rights for the return of the land. They go beyond our lives. They go forever, as long as the company exists. If it's used for the reason it was taken, we have no rights. But the minute that changes, we do. Now, you may already understand that I gave the city notice a few weeks ago that because they've now said we don't want the land anymore, we want just anybody to come forward with a proposal. We signed a memorandum of understanding with River's Edge. The door's open. What they have said is, whatever reason we took it, we're not using it for that reason now. That triggered those rights. I'm pretty sure that Dan and the rest of the council will say, well, we disagree. So it'll have to be resolved. But that's out there forever. Even if the courts, the Ontario Municipal Board said, Mr. Ryan, you're going too far with the rights and Dan's going not far enough. Somebody's going to spell out those rights, and they exist for a reason. So we don't ever go away.
I think you've dealt a bit with the next quote, but perhaps there's something you'd like to add. You mentioned Roger Black, and Roger Black said, quote, noted mayor's comment that the expropriation was completed, adding the mayor said it's not an issue. We need to know where it is.
Well, there's no sense repeating what I've said, but essentially I've explained that we're not done yet, and that we will have to finish with the procedural order, complete the discoveries, and then deal with the return of the land rights if we can't resolve it. And the OMB hearing will have to be finished. And just to give you an idea, you may recall the expense of finishing the hearing at the OMB for the Walmart project. It was approximately $1 million. That pales in comparison to what we're about to do with this expropriation hearing. There's 20,000 documents. There's tons of witnesses. There's 17 years to cover. And this isn't a how much is the land worth. It's how much did the Ryans throw away for 17 years trying to get a project built that the city took, and for all intents and purposes is now admitting they're going to try and build my project again, just without us. And then after that, any matter that was not covered by expropriation goes back to Superior Court under the city's original 2002 action to be finished.
Which is a nice lead-in to a quote from Keith Culleton. Get the issue out of the courts, ask citizens, dig in and get going.
Well, Wendy and I are prepared to sit down with the citizens of Stratford and do just that. You're paying the bill and we're receiving the money. I'd hate to think that 11 people get elected can stand between us and a reasonable solution. So, I've made it clear to the council that I'd be willing to meet with them. They have no interest. I'm going to go one step further and direct my solicitors to try and set up such a meeting. But to be honest, it'll be just a heck of a lot quicker if the citizens create their own committee and sit with Wendy and I, and let's make a deal that satisfies everyone. And then we get we'll get the matter dealt with.
And continuing with Keith Culleton, another quote, we've had tremendous slowdowns. A former owner keeps coming forward and taking us to court.
Well, I've covered most of it, but I want to just bring up a few dates. On December the 8th, 2008 was the first time anybody was aware, or I was aware anyway, that expropriation was on the table. you may fully understand that it was never discussed openly at council that they were going to expropriate. I got a call at 11 o'clock at night from the Beacon asking me for my opinion. I thought he was joking. On June the 15th, 2009, the city registered a plan of expropriation, which they were obligated to do. So we lost 6 months getting from we want to take it to we've registered the plan. January 2010, we entered into minute. I think it ran out of juice.
The light's still on the other one. It's okay. Use that.
So on January the 10th, we signed the minutes of settlement, agreeing that the OMB would determine the final amount to be paid. On January 2012, the claim as it is today was presented to the city. Now you can imagine it takes a little while to organize all that needs to be said in a valuation claim when it covers 17 years and there was a project underway. Since that time, the city has been creating or causing court matters. They refused to carry out the relocation, so we had to deal with that in court. They failed to make a proper payment under Section 25, which we dealt with again in court. That's why we went from the $500,000 to the interim payment of $5 million. And now, of course, they're refusing to come to the OMB, citing we want to go back and see who owns the parking lot. Now, it's interesting, but one of the discussions that we had with the city and is I don't necessarily have to own the parking lot to get some bang for my buck. I get value because of the Downey Street parking lot. I don't own that either. So at the end of the day, it would be kind of senseless to go to the Superior Court to ask them who owns the parking lot if it only changes the total value by a buck. But we're going to know that by the time we get through the discoveries on the 11.5 acres. And it's a fact that municipal parking lots, which it was at the time we owned, whether I owned it or not, it was a municipal parking lot. And it benefited our land. Therefore, it increases the value. So if I sold you the Cooper site and you knew you had 2 municipal parking lots, that would allow me to increase the value of the land behind those parking lots. So we're not going to the Superior Court first to figure out who owns it. We're going to go to the OMB, figure out what should be paid for the land that's not in dispute, and then decide if we even need to go.